My name is Jill Hoffman, and every month we have an international discussion group. And we alternate every month with, or every couple of months with climate change. And last month we did international humanitarian law. Next month we'll do Sudan. But this month I'm very excited because I'm welcoming a wonderful photographer who's won a number of awards and who agreed to do this um, today. He's worked out of Kenya. He's worked, just recently came back from the Galapagos Islands. He's won a number of Audubon Awards and other photography awards. He attempts to use photography as a way to help wildlife and conserve and help with conservation. And I'd just like to welcome him. And also, I'd like to thank Holly Rising, who is so wonderful to have helped me today with the technological support. And Kevin, I just welcome you and thank you so much for participating in this. We're going to start right now. And I'm going to ask you a crazy question, as I promised to do. Is there anything I've left out in terms of introduction before I ask you the question?
No, I think you covered most of it. I will add that I am, and I'll go over this when I start talking more about myself. But I live in Santa Cruz, California. I grew up in New York, so don't hold that against me.
I won't. I'm bi-coastal. In any case, the question I always ask, or most of the time I ask my speakers, is, what did you think you were going to do when you were in high school?
Well,
How
one of the things that,
this journey?
yeah, sure. It's funny, even before high school, my dad was always leaning on my two older brothers to try to get them to go into marine science because he loved Jacques Cousteau and thought that was the way everybody should go. And he never bothered me, just kept working on them. And then they went off to college and did other things, some very good things. And then in the background, I went off to study marine science. So I guess listening to him over the years worked that way. And when I was growing up, I wanted to be like Jacques Cousteau. I ended up taking a turn at one point and going into technology, but that's really what I wanted to do when I was younger, is be just like Jacques Cousteau and go out and explore underwater.
What brought you to the work that you're doing now?
So through college, I studied marine science, and then I moved out to California to go to Moss Landing Marine Labs. So I had all this marine science. While I was doing marine science and research, it became easier to document things if I had a camera. So I'd always done snapshots with small cameras, but eventually got a bigger camera so I could take pictures and photograph what I was working on. And then over time, that just led to photographing more people, then doing a little photojournalism, doing some event photography. And then I took a long hiatus from that, did some video work, mostly of family. And when I got older and my kids had grown up to the point where I didn't have to babysit them anymore, then I figured, you know what, now's the time. I wanted to do what I always wanted to do, which was to get into nature photography and especially wildlife photography. So I think that my background training set me up for that. And then I had a career in tech for a number of years, and that helped me get the gear that I wanted to get so that I could photograph wildlife in a way that worked for me. And that's my story.
Wonderful. Go for it. You have the screen is yours.
All right, great. So thanks everybody for joining. I really appreciate it. The title of my talk today is Encouraging Conservation Through Wildlife Photography, and I'll go through that in a moment. What I wanted to do is first talk a little bit about who I am. And as you've heard, some of this already, but I'll restate it. So I'm a nature photographer. I like sharing views of wildlife that most people never see. I live in Santa Cruz, California, and do a lot of photography in the Bay Area. So from about Point Reyes to Point Lobos along the coast, and then inland to maybe Merced National Wildlife Area. So kind of in that range. And that's what I'll do on my day-to-day basis whenever I get out and do photography, which is very often. Like I said, I have a background in marine science and I worked in technology for a number of years. So that helped me be very comfortable with the technology of um, using computers to edit the images that I make. I'm self-taught as a photographer. I did take some basic black and white photography class way back when, but most everything else since then has been self-taught up to a certain point. Then I started watching YouTube videos to learn specific techniques, especially using Lightroom, which is what I mostly use to develop my images. I've been a photographer for more than 40 years, probably closer to 45 years, primarily shooting Nikon that entire time, but I also had a span, and I still have the equipment where I was using Sony cameras as well. And I'm all on mirrorless at this time, using mostly long lenses, but I have a range of lenses from about 14 millimeters up to 800 millimeters that I use. And I mostly use the 400 to 600 millimeter range lenses. So that's a little bit about me, and I have my contact information on the screen in case you want to reach out to me, but you can always search for me, just Kevin Lohman Photography, and that will generally get you there on social media or find my website. So what I want to do is just share a little bit of what I see when I'm out looking at wildlife. So I made a quick video here. It's 1 minute long, and these are some things that I see when I'm out with my camera. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little bit of what I see. So today I want to talk to you about the power of photography and how it can help with conservation efforts. And there's a variety of ways of looking at that. And I look at this as nature photography and conservation kind of tie together in 5 different ways. So the first one is raising awareness. The powerful images that we can create as photographers can help people become more engaged with the wildlife and the environment and the habitat that these animals live in. Second item is educating. Introducing people to new species, habitats, and ecosystems helps them relate and connect. And the more that people connect with animals and the ecosystem may inspire them to be in a better position to want to be able to support them and from a conservation perspective. Photography can also have the added advantage of helping with scientific research. For example, I report bird sightings through my photography using an app. And as I'm providing that information to Cornell through the app, that gives them more knowledge on bird habitats and locations. So I think it really helps me and it helps them as well. Third item is advocating through environmental organizations. Now, I do this as much as I possibly can because I'm one person. I have a relatively small voice in the world of conservation, and I'm trying to continue to expand that. And I'll talk more about that in a bit. But these other environmental organizations that I work with or have a peripheral engagement with, they have a bigger voice. So that allows the images that I create to be shared more and to tell more of a story to many, many more people. So I think that's a real critical way to do this. And I donate my images in most cases to environmental organizations, especially the local ones that I work with. So I provide them with the images so they have them and can use them however they need to spread their message. Fourth item is promoting sustainable tourism or ecotourism, because this gives incentives to preserve species and the environment they live in. And the last item is connections, inspiring a connection with nature, which makes everything personal and it makes it real. People may be inspired to spend more time outdoors, which often leads to conservation. And all my images help that connection with nature, whether I'm sharing them directly or through an organization or a publication or through a presentation like this. So what I first want to talk about is raising awareness. And I raise awareness through a variety of ways. I certainly have my social media presence on Instagram and Facebook, and I have a website. But there are some publications that I've had my work go out in. I did a brief article for Sony that's up on their website in our Behind the Shot page. I've had some publications. One of the bigger things that I'm really humbled by and proud of is that one of my images of an owl is riding around on a bus in Santa Cruz through Santa Cruz Metro. They have an amazing program called One Ride at a Time. And they have a lot of wildlife buses. Many of them are from Franz Lonting's great work. But there's one of my little buses with an owl out there, and I'm real happy. If you ever see it, let me know. Another way is when I get in the news through some kind
your audio, Kevin.
Kevin, your screen froze.
of publication, yeah, it's working on my side.
Oh, now it is. Now it's working again.
Oh, there, it just caught up. Yeah, I think it's just a lag there. So another thing I take advantage of are photo contests, because that's another way of reaching a very broad group of people, internationally. I'm very proud that I recently received a first prize placement in the Birds and Landscape category for the Audubon Photography Awards this year. I've also had I had an image in their honorable mention for their professional honorable mention, and they only picked 10 images for their prizes and honorable mentions. So I had 2 of them. I was very, very happy with that. And then they also have their top 100, and I have one of my images there this year. And last year I had 3 images in top 100 with Audubon. But there's other things. There's NAMPA, which is the North American Nature Photography Association. I do well there, and the Share the View contest. And also in 2022, I had the fun, great honor of having one of my images of a winking fox made it to the finals of the Comedy Wildlife Photography Awards. And there was a very brief segment on the Today Show where Al Roker introduced my fox and a couple of other images. So that's my 15 minutes of fame. But the biggest thing that I do is advocating through environmental organizations. There are a few that I work with, but again, with my small voice, it can be magnified by working with these different organizations. So one that I really have near and dear to my heart is the Elkhorn Slough Foundation. I worked with these folks back when I was a student at Moss Landing Marine Labs, and now I get to work with them indirectly through the photography that I create and donate for their use. I've had 3 out of their recent 4 calendar covers. And I just heard yesterday that I'm going to have the calendar cover for the 2025 calendar that'll be coming out for this year, or next year, I should say. They also use my images. There's an ad campaign that they're starting, and they use them on their website. So it's a really great way for them to extend their voice because they have a small staff. They can't cover the entire slough all the time or be ready to photograph things. So by not only me, but other photographers being able to provide their images to them, that allows them to tell a more complete and a more compelling story, thus, encouraging more conservation. Another thing I do is I work with other environmental groups like Environteers, and I believe you've had Andy Carmen from the Environteers speak to you in the past. He's a great guy and really puts a lot of energy into their regular newsletter that they produce. And since I started working with Andy back in March of 2022, he's used 19 of my images to kick off the Environteers newsletters that he sends out. So now I want to talk about promoting sustainable tourism. Great thing about tourism is it lets us connect in multiple ways with the communities out there. The first is it supports those local communities if you're working with local resources. So when I travel, I try to work with folks that live locally or are hired to represent a company locally, so that most of the money that I spend, and I want to spend money there, will go back to that organization. An example of this, when I was down in Ecuador in the Amazon rainforest, I stayed at a location called Napo Wildlife Center, and it's completely run by indigenous tribe there, and they built it, they own it, they run it, and the money goes to them. So, and it was also a 5-star place. I highly recommend it. That's the Napo, N-A-P-O Wildlife Center. So it's places like that, or when you travel distances, you stay with a local lodge as opposed to maybe a mainstream hotel. That's getting money back into the community, and people are being hired to work there and support you. So that's one thing that I think is really important about tourism. Another is it encourages investment in the local ecosystem. So if the country sees more tourist dollars, they will want to invest in that and keep tourists safe, discourage poaching, make sure that the animals have a safe environment, that they're continuing to thrive, because that's what's bringing more money into that city, state, or country. So it's extremely valuable to them. But when we're doing this traveling, we are certainly, adding to our carbon footprint. So, one of the things always propose, travel only when needed. So I do a lot of photography, but most of my photography is local for me here. When I drive around, I have an electric vehicle, I have solar power on my roof. These are things that help me minimize my overall carbon footprint. And I spend a lot of time locally, but there are times where I do need to travel, and I have done a fair amount of traveling this year. So when you do travel, stay longer, because if you're minimizing those long international flights, then you're not increasing the carbon footprint as much. It'd be nice if we can solve that problem somehow, but it's certainly something that we need to think about it. So that's what I think about from a tourism perspective. Now, at this point, when I've done presentations before, one of the feedbacks I get is people really want to see more of my photography. So I'm going to now take some time and go through some of my individual images from some of the travel destinations that I've been at, photographing wildlife and nature in general. So I'll start with my first section, which will be from Svalbard up in Norway. It's north of Norway. It's an archipelago north of Norway. And this is a scene when I was there of this gorgeous, gorgeous landscape, and just one of many that we saw. Snow covered. It was the winter time. There was snow everywhere. It was quite chilly. We were on a boat going around the islands and just had a beautiful representation of the country there. But I was looking for wildlife as well. So I got to see reindeer. This is a female reindeer that's grubbing under the snow for any lichens that it can eat. I saw an Arctic fox, which was a real treat. At one point, we were looking for Arctic fox, and we were looking in one direction, and a fox ran right past us about 5 feet away and zipped ahead. And then somebody yelled fox, and we looked at it, and then somebody yelled another fox, and another fox ran by. And I managed to get one image from that, but a couple of other images during the trip, and that was fun. We also got to see ptarmigan in their winter plumage, feathers all ruffled up from the wind that was blowing on them. And out of the boat, we got to see northern fulmars flying through the snow, because it was fairly snowy when we were there. And walrus. And of course, we were very blessed to see a polar bear that came up to visit our ship. And from what I read, there's currently an estimated 22,000 to 25,000 polar bears worldwide, but 2/3 of the worldwide population could possibly become extinct by 2050 due to climate change melting their sea ice habitat. So it's definitely something we want to be aware of, that conservation is not just to preserve the animals, it's to preserve the landscape that they live in. The ice packs are crucial to the way the polar bears hunt and live. So as things warm up in the world, then there's less ice, which makes it much more challenging for polar bears to get meals and to survive. Now we're going to go from cold to warm. So we were in Africa. I went there in July of 2021. This is zebras at sunset. I really enjoyed hiking up mountains in Uganda to see mountain gorillas. I went on 3 gorilla treks. And the good news is the populations are slowly recovering. When I saw them in 2021, there was an estimated just over 1,000 individuals. Now there's estimated around 1,060 to 1,070 or so individuals. So they've been having a very slow but steady population increase. And that's all due to the ecotourism of people going to visit and the countries realizing there's money to be made by protecting these animals. Got to see these beautiful elephants in Africa. Baboons on the side of the road. They have some big teeth. And flamingo is a lesser flamingo in Amboseli in Kenya. And then wildebeest in the Masai Mara. There's one that was running along using a slow shutter speed. And here's an image I really like of one that's leaped off of the hillside into the Mara River to cross the river, hoping to avoid crocodiles. And the others are walking down into it. But I like this slow shutter speed pan and how it came out. And here's a male lion in the Masai Mara, just in the grass, watching the rest of its pride off in the distance. So all these images help you connect with nature. Even if you've never been to Africa, it starts to bring up memories you might have had from childhood or experiences you have from talking to other people. All of these things help inspire conservation. Just a few images from Costa Rica. I was there in July of 2018. It's American crocodile. And then we were very blessed and lucky to see this Baird's tapir. We were outside Corcovado National Park, and this one was walking along the main road. Got to see squirrel monkeys leaping in the trees and also sitting calmly on some branches. Really fun animals to watch, a lot of energy. Toucans, and saw a white ibis with 3 of its chicks on a nest. And also in the same rookery, a cattle egret with 2 chicks on a nest. I posted this online at one time and it got shared by the BBC and had over 100,000 likes. And almost every comment was about the birds having a bad hair day. And howler monkeys, which are amazing to listen to. Then we went off to Ecuador. I was in the cloud forest and I spent a month in Ecuador again, trying to spend as much time as possible in an area. And this was back in April. Lots of hummingbirds. This is a plate-billed toucan. This is a strong-billed wood creeper. Buff-tailed coronets. Violet-tailed sylph. And then an Andean guan, which is basically very similar in behavior to a chicken. Then we transferred over to the Amazon rainforest, and I already talked about the beautiful place we stayed at in Napo. These are smooth-billed ani. We spent most of our time on canoes and saw a black caiman. And then a Huatzin, which makes this really great huffing sound. It goes when you get close to it. And they also have a very strong odor, which is not pleasant. So good reason to not get too close. We saw red howler monkeys and more squirrel monkeys. I also like this striated heron. If you notice, it's holding a red berry. It was using that to fish. It would drop the berry in the water and then pick it up and hoping to catch a fish that would come up, using it like a lure. Then the big trip was to the Galapagos Islands. This is a brown pelican diving into the water at sunset. And then these are brown noddies on a brown pelican. The brown pelican would hit the water and stun the fish when it hits the water. And then the brown noddy would come and land on the pelican, trying to get a quick, easy meal of the fish that were stunned. Saw a land iguana, several of them. Marine iguanas, which were my favorites. And here's one taken from a low angle as it was walking out of the water. Of course, the Galapagos giant tortoise. And I was very happy to see the blue-footed booby. This one was a little paying very close attention to its feather and looking a little cross-eyed. The sea lions, the young ones, were a lot of fun. They would come right up to you and stick their noses right on your lens of your camera. They were always very curious. And then I saw a Galapagos penguin at sunset, and I was in a boat bobbing up and down when I made this image and was very happy to get it. And then we were very lucky to see a lava flowing off Fernandina Island into the sea. And this is an image that I made in the evening as we waited offshore in our boat. Just spectacular. I'll show a few images also from the United States before I start to wrap up this presentation. These are Western monarch butterflies, which are threatened, I think. They're on the endangered species list, but I believe their status is either threatened or endangered. So, a lot of that is habitat and environmental loss that is probably contributing to that. Again, conservation is a big thing, and people love butterflies. They love the looks of the butterflies. So showing pictures of them helps get people connected to what butterflies can offer. Up in Alaska, coastal brown bears, a mom and two of her cubs, and a couple of bears wrestling. They were play fighting. More locally to me, Western screech owl. Very local to me, a place about 15 minutes from my house, a snowy egret that I caught a sand crab at sunset. This is my winking fox I mentioned earlier. That was up in San Jose. This is a cedar waxwing with a berry that I picked from a cotoneaster plant, and this was right across the street from my house. So you can find wildlife everywhere. This is a couple days ago out in Moss Landing. Went out on an early morning whale watching trip, saw these cormorants. This is a humpback whale breaching. This is from a prior trip, but now's a good time to get out on the bay. And then the Monterey Bay is a national marine sanctuary. And this is juvenile great horned owl in one of our local state parks. So again, having the state parks there and being able to support them is really helpful for the environment and the wildlife. So I want to wrap this up and kind of summarize again. So how can photography influence conservation? So connecting those two, this is kind of the way I feel about it. So by showcasing the beauty and importance of these natural habitats for both the everyday and endangered species, we reveal sides of animals that most people have never seen. This allows us to connect emotionally, which can inspire hope and support of animals and their environment, creating a desire to support conservation efforts. By providing environmental organizations with access to photos, which I do with a number of groups, we help spread this conservation message to a broader audience. And the message we want to deliver is we need to support the protection and preservation of the incredible diversity of life on our planet. And we deliver this message through beauty of the animals and where they live, emotions that connect us to those animals and make it real, and we inspire guardianship of what is available to us so our children and their children can continue to enjoy what we have today. Now, I'm not here to beg, but I am here to point out that this is time to begin, to do whatever you can. And I'd like to end with these thoughts. So just a few slides with a few thoughts for you to look at and ponder. And I'm not going to talk right now, so if it's quiet, that's fine. So I want to thank you all for spending this time with me. I'm going to put up this one slide here. These are some organizations that I support, friends support. The first four are local to me: Elkhorn Slough Foundation, the Arboretum, Native Animal Rescue, Land Trust of Santa Cruz County. Then there's the state parks, and then there's some national organizations that I'm sure most of you or all of you are familiar with. But these are ones that I think it's worthwhile donating money to, or time, or photographs if you're a photographer. Just whatever you can do to help get the message out there that we're trying to support our environment from a conservation perspective. And then, feel free to contact me if there's any questions you have or any thoughts you have, or, visit my website and take a look at some of the images. I post regularly on Instagram and Facebook, so feel free to follow me there. And
I just
that's
found
what I
out that
have.
you have a monarch butterfly on your lens,
On the hat, yes.
on your hat. OMG.
My wife took that picture. We had hatched a monarch and put it out in the yard, and we were just watching it flutter around, and then it landed on my hat. And so I handed my phone to my wife and said, "Please take a picture for me."
Amazing. Amazing. I wanted to open it up to questions, but I wanted to share something that was very dear to my heart. When I was very young, I lived in Ecuador, and I visited the Galapagos Islands. In fact, my father brought back a Galapagos turtle that I lived with. I probably was 2.5, 3 years old when I first met the Galapagos turtle, and he became our family pet and then was returned to the wild when my father went back to the Galapagos. But it's one of those memories that I have. And I was so excited to see the Galapagos turtle in that photograph that you did. So thank you for sharing that one.
Very welcome.
And also, I have monarch butterflies growing in my garden. So I'm so excited. And that was brought about by I seeing a photograph and somebody telling me they were endangered species. So I decided to grow some in my yard. So I know the power of a photograph. It
That's
makes
great.
a
I think
huge
they can use
difference.
all that help. Yes, and
Yeah,
photographs.
we could. And so what I want to do is open it up to the audience. This is your time, dear audience, to share any questions you have with Kevin, any questions you want to ask him, any comments you want to make about. Um, um, and Nanette is asking in the chat, can we talk a little bit about cameras and lenses?
Sure. So I'm not sure what specific questions you have, so I'll give you a brief overview, and if you have something you want to jump in on, please do so. I primarily use Nikon mirrorless cameras nowadays. I shoot primarily with a Nikon Z9 or a Nikon Z8. And for many of my photographs, I use either a 400 millimeter lens or a 600 millimeter lens. I do for some other things that have a variety of other lenses, as I mentioned there. And then all those images I create, I shoot in RAW format, bring them back to my computer and edit those in Lightroom. And then I share them out via Instagram and Facebook and on my website and to a number of environmental sources as well. So if you have a specific question, I guess jump on the call and or unmute and let us know.
And does anybody else have any questions or comments for Kevin about his work or his travels?
This is Holly. I have a follow-on to that. What shutter speeds do you use for those capturing things in motion?
Sure. When I'm shooting in slow motion and I'm panning with the subject, I'll play around with things anywhere from like 1/30th of a second to 1/200th of a second. It depends on how close the subject is and how fast they're moving. If I want to show slow motion, that blur in the photos. But maybe a starting point be around 1/125th of a second, 1/160th of a second, and then see what results you're getting from there. For other objects like hummingbirds that are moving fast, I might shoot up to 1/5000, 1/8000th of a second if I really want to try to freeze them. But I was photographing owls the other day, and I was hand holding my 600 millimeter lens at about 1/15th of a second. And the camera technology is so good today, it really helps stabilize that. And I've done this a lot. So I was able to get some very nice sharp images and reduce the ISO significantly by hand holding at a very slow shutter speed in that instance. But for owls in flight, I usually want to be at least 1/800th of a second or faster, depending on the light. And I think somebody just raised their hand. I don't.
Hi, this is Shireen Connery. This was really, really amazing to see. I'm so glad I joined this call. I have a 13-year-old who loves nature and photography, and he's been doing it for 3 years now. And he does fundraising work for Audubon, and some of your pictures I remember seeing from the material. So I just wanted to hear, like, how did you get started? And I'm going to have him listen to this. I saw it was recorded. I got excited. He can't right now, but I'm going to have him listen later. And I would love to hear what inspired you or what advice you have for young, up and budding nature photographers.
You bet. So first of all, I think it's awesome that they have an interest in this. I've always had an interest in wildlife, watching it from my house, studying it in school and in college, whether it was fish, invertebrates, or mammals, just kelp, plants, everything. It just attracted my eye. So I've always had a love for that, and I've always played around with cameras and photographing people at events or just friends. And as I got more and more comfortable with that, and I got to the point where I said, okay, I have a better feel on what I need to do, then that's when I got a better lens for my camera, and I could start photographing wildlife. You probably want a minimum of a 400 millimeter lens, or a lens that equivalent of 400 millimeters or further. So 400 to 600 is generally a good range, but I like 400 a lot. So you're going out and then shooting, photographing more is really what you want to do. And I always suggest to people that are getting new into this is to pick one type of subject. Like, say you want to learn about birds in flight. Go down to the beach or to a local dump or whatever, where there may be a bunch of gulls, and just start photographing them and play around with shutter speeds, play around with light angles, have the sun behind you, have the sun opposite the subject that you're photographing, and see what's easier for you, what gives you more pleasing images. And then the things you like, do more of, and the things you don't like, either get better at it or just do more of what you love. So I got into this when, like I mentioned earlier, when my kids finally got to an age where I didn't have to stay home with them. And I couldn't really afford the camera equipment that I wanted to get when I was younger. But I wish I had started even younger doing wildlife photography. I've done photography for over 40 years, but wildlife I've been doing since the end of 2017. So you can get good fast if you have an eye for it. So I encourage them, get out there and photograph. And reach out if they has any questions, have them reach out.
Will do. Thank you so much again.
You're very welcome.
This is Nanette. It's actually silly question, but I'm always struggling with who to use to get my photos, where to get them, processed nowadays. Do you have any tips on that?
Yeah, I'm fortunate that I have a local place, but they're also national and I believe international. Bay Photo Lab is a marvelous place to get images printed. You can order them online and have them mailed directly to you. Or if you're in the Santa Cruz, Scotts Valley, kind of Monterey Bay area, you can always swing by one of their locations and have them drop ship to that location and then swing by and pick them up. That's what I do, is I'll have prints delivered to a local store, and then I run in there and pick it up. It's about 5 minutes from my house. If you want larger prints and you want to have a different finish to them, there's a really awesome photographic print gallery down in Pacific Grove called Bradley Print Services. And I think they do an outstanding job. I like their prints on metal panels with a matte finish. And I've been doing a lot of my work that way over the last couple of years. So, Bay Photo also prints on metal with a different method, which also looks very nice, but looks very different. Or you can do paper prints from either of those groups. But there's a couple to start with. Bay Photo, if you must do mail order, then they can definitely support you there.
Thank you.
Wow.
One more question about stock photos. Did you start doing stock photo when you were just beginning, or?
I have not done anything with stock photos. By the time I got to the point where I was even thinking about it, a number of people are being very disheartened by what they get out of stock photos nowadays, from payments and all that. So I just never really jumped into it. I may at some point. I certainly have enough images. Just when I was in Galapagos, I got some really wonderful images I'm very happy with, but I've clicked the camera over 190,000 times. So I've brought home 190,000 images to go through, and I still haven't gotten through all of them. And I expect in Africa, since I'll be there for a month, I'll probably be up in the 80 to 100,000 images by the time I'm done with that trip. So yeah, it's a lot to go through. I have a lot of images that could potentially be stock photos, but if you figure it out, let me know.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Anything else from anybody?
Since nobody else is asking a question right now, I'd ask you: do you ever use HDR for your photography?
Basically, no. I think a lot of that has to do with most of my imaging is with wildlife, and I'm concentrating on trying to get the best image in the camera that I can at the time something is happening. I do some landscapes, and I'm real proud of some of the landscape images that I've made. But at most, what I usually do with those is if it's a broad scene, it may stitch images together, and I'll do that, reasonably often when I'm out there, and basically take several images right next to each other, and then through software blend them together so it makes one bigger image. That gives you a little bit better resolution, allows you to print bigger if you need to print really big. But it's not really needed. I mean, like I showed you, I have a photo of an owl on a bus, and that was one shot out of the camera, and that's using my 46 megapixel camera when I made that picture. So and that could print on the side of a bus and look very nice. If you're up very, very close to it, you can see the dots and stuff, but at a normal distance, watching it ride by on the side of the road or looking out the side of your window, it looks awesome. So they did a very good job with those kind of printings and can do a lot with the modern day cameras. But HDR has not been something I've really spent any time on.
This is Nanette again. If you had to choose like a couple different publications, like photography publications that gives good tips for, budding photographers or learning new things, do you have one in mind, or that would be good to?
There is
But give 2 or 3, Kevin.
Yeah. Well, there's different aspects to this. So from a viewing perspective, I really like the Audubon magazine because it gives you, some ideas, a sense of stories. And I think to be a wildlife photographer, you need to understand the natural life of the subject that you're going to photograph. So various wildlife magazines are good, and Audubon is one good one. Cornell, if you donate to them, they send out a periodic magazine as well that has some great stories. Natural History is a great magazine. The Nature Conservancy has a publication. So those give you ideas of images that you can see. From a photographic perspective, there was a magazine that recently closed its doors, which was Outdoor Photographer. But the guy that I mentioned who has the print lab down in Pacific Grove, Jason Bradley, he actually has picked that up, and he's launching a new magazine that will be coming out digitally, I believe, not print version. And I believe that'll be out, if not before, I can't remember if you said October, but definitely by December. And if you search for Jason Bradley magazine, you can probably find it. I don't remember the new name of the magazine because it's not out yet, but I can certainly put you in touch. If you go to Bradley Photographic, his webpage, he should have a link on there where you can sign up and receive the first issue free when it becomes available. And I think that's going to be a great one. He used to write for Outdoor Photographer, and he's got a number of different great photographers lined up to help contribute to that magazine. He asked me if I write anything, but I haven't written any articles yet. So that's something I might pursue in the future.
You'll excuse the music in the background. What I wanted to share with the group is that next week we'll be sending out a follow-up letter. And if Kevin thinks of any other resources that he wants to share, that'll be on there as well as the recording of this meeting. But any last minute questions, comments that people want to share with Kevin, now is your time. Going once, going twice. Holly.
Thank you.
What did you want to say?
This has been quite a learning experience for me. Thank you very much for coming and doing this.
Okay, well, I want to thank you all for inviting me to this, and for all the participants on the call. I want to thank you so much for taking time to watch this live, and I hope you got something fun out of it. I hope you learned a little bit, and if anything, I hope it developed a deeper connection with wildlife and help inspire you to consider either starting your approach to conservation or expanding it. If you're already doing a lot, there's always a little bit more that we can all do, and I'm thinking about that all the time. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I want you to know that there are so many thank yous in the chat, plus these
Awesome.
2 hands that are up with 3 buttons on them. I don't know what that means, but probably is similar to having a heart or a hand up. Thank you for being on today. I'm so grateful you took the time and the patience to deal with the technology that it took to share this.
No, that's good. I apologize. Yeah, I don't know why, because I have a really fast internet connection here, but I think, and you can edit this out, but I think because I used to work at Apple, maybe Microsoft has it in for me. I don't know.
It's the competition. What can I tell you? Thank you, Kevin. You've been wonderful. And wait, I think there's one more. No, is that another thank you? That's another thank you.
That's another thank you. And I just
thank yous in the chat.
I had to quit my app so I could see what was in there.
Oh, good. And it says also, it has 2 little smiling faces as well.
Very nice.
I never know. I guess they're called emojis, right? That's what they're called.
Emojis,
anyway, you've got some emojis in there as well. And I just want to thank you, and all feel free. Every 3rd Thursday, we have a discussion group. You're always welcome. And Kevin, you're welcome to join anytime you feel like it. And in other words, have a wonderful, wonderful day. It's been a joy listening to you, Kevin, and seeing the amazing photographs that just bring warmth to me, and also some of the beautiful animals that I see on there. I'm just like, oh, wow. goodbye, everybody, and thank you so much.
Bye all.
We'll see you next month. Take care. Hey, bye.
Thank you.